Well, I decided for a change to do another video about what some of these machines look like before I play with them. Basically in the condition I get them. Now, this machine's a little different. Normally, a machine like this would be into the parts bin because obviously the Victrola 50 was never offered with a red enamel finish. Originally in 1922, the finish on that was mahogany. And oak, if you ordered it that way, but this one was mahogany. And we have a few little additions to it. We have some nice kitty cat stickers on there, little teddy bear stickers or whatever. My guess is this work was done in the 1940s or 50s. Could have been a little earlier, but I doubt it. And it is a 1922 machine, number 68,946 Victrola 50. For some reason the lid stay is not connected. I guess they didn't think they needed it. It was an inexpensive parts machine I picked up, but it had some good features. One is that crank right there, which is actually correct. That is a correct Victrola 50 crank. They are kind of hard to find sometimes and tend to be around 50-60 bucks when you do turn one up. Still has the side handle on it. Sometimes those are eliminated when someone does a project like this. And you see the case. The case really isn't in bad shape. The worst damage is back here, where the lid was allowed to flop open because of that not connected lid stay, and somebody epoxied, by the look of it, a very long time ago, the back of the lid, but not the case. The case itself in this one was salvaged. It did not break, which is because it has the second revision of horn. The first type of Victrola 50 horn was big. It curved around here. It took up the whole back of the case. But in this one you can see the back of that case is actually wood, and that reinforces it quite a bit. It prevents a lot of cracking. When this flops all the way open, it used to tear off right here, split the whole back of the case right off. You'd see it all the time with shoemaker nails hammered in there to keep it together and all kinds of stuff. But in this case, what it did was it broke the lid instead, which, you know, in this machine is not exactly a huge tragedy, because this is never going to be really an original machine again. Time you get that paint off, there's nothing left of the original finish under it, and it just isn't worth it. You can see what they did with the screws back here. Those are not original Victrola 50 screws. Well, those ones are. You see the difference. And somebody thought the needle must be important, so they kept a used needle taped there. Two of them, actually. Throw them out, because needles are expendable and they're only used once and then thrown away. And never take a chance on a needle you find in one of these things. You can see this. This was caused by the lid being closed with the reproducer still in the upper position. You can see this. Thousands of little needle punctures, and that. Both caused by the same thing. Leaving it up like that when you attempt to close the lid, not usually a good thing. But you can get a pretty good look at what these cases look like and how well they're made. They're very well braced, as you can see, in the corners with wood and with metal. That is all solid mahogany with these. The Victrola 50 was either quarter sawn oak or it was mahogany. And while they did use veneers on the lid and on the bottom and the very top, the side panels are solid wood. They're solid mahogany. Fairly expensive type of wood even then to use. You can see the original factory chalk marks on there. But, and the horn, you know, this is what's left, and the felt really wasn't terrible. See, it's a little eaten up. Someone dragged the needle on there at some point, but that could have been, you know, salvageable. I would have replaced it if I was redoing the whole machine. It had a decent Victrola number 2. This was a dealer upgrade in 1922. The Victrola 50 was originally offered with the exhibition reproducer, but the number 2 was an option the dealers would offer. You know, the nickel plating is a little corroded. It's got a good diaphragm by the look of it. The gaskets are completely shot. They're hard as stone. That would not have reproduced sound very well at all. And this has to be completely rebuilt, and it will be. That goes into my reproducer collection. You can see they painted the motorboard too. And there would have been a sticker right here. You can barely make it out under the paint. That would have been your patent sticker, and generally the dates on these patent stickers, they'd say October 22, April 22, whatever, would be pretty close to the actual production of the machine. And here we have the single spring motor. Now, this one's actually in pretty good shape. It's dirty, yes, they always are. That black graphite grease you can see on there, it's 100 years old. It's pretty nasty. Needs to be taken totally apart and cleaned. The spring in this one is still, I believe, in good shape. I'll know more when I get into the can. The governor is in good shape, except, what did I find before? See if I can find it again. Ah, here we go. You see that? There's actually a screw under there, going through the governor spring to the weight, and over time it has loosened. Now, if that comes all the way loose when that thing is spinning, it's going to be like a grenade in there, so you don't want that. That'll have to be taken apart, the springs checked, and probably replaced, and all the screws tightened. You don't want to get too carried away tightening governor screws. It's very important. The screws, as you can see, are very tiny. That's a brass body, and you can break screws if you over tighten them. You just have to have a feel for them. Everything else looks pretty good. The gears aren't worn at all. They never are with these. I mean, these are good motors. This is essentially, because it's the second revision of the motor they used in this. The original motor was simply out of a Victrola tabletop Model 4 stuffed into this case, and you can always tell because this little crank hole here on the first type of motor is over here. On the second one, 1922, 23, before it moved around to the side of the case, the crank hole was here. So there's actually 3 different single spring motors used with the Victrola 50. This is one of them. Just a typical, I mean, they're all very similar. The difference is in the frames to allow for different crank positions. But they're all basically the same spring can, gears, governor, that remains the same for all 3 motors. Gotta look under there. Usually, yeah, it's not really that dirty under there. I had expected worse. But that'll be cleaned, put away. You can see all the bolts and such that came out of it. All of them with red painted heads on them. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this machine, but probably what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to clean the motor, rebuild the reproducer, clean the case a little bit, maybe glue a few joints, like right here is loosening up slightly, and I'm going to get it playing. I might sell this one eventually as just a player for someone who has a stack of records and really doesn't care if the machine's collectible or not or what condition it's in, just wants something that plays good. You know, I keep machines for that myself. If I want to go to a show or something like that, or to the flea market, and I know there's going to be a stack of records, I'll bring one of my beater machines, you might say, with me, something that if something happens to it, I'm not going to be too heartbroken. Not something I would bring at HMV 102 or one of my really nice Victrola 50s, but something like this would definitely fit the bill. And getting this, there's nothing here that's really terrible, although mechanically speaking. This can all be repaired fairly easily. I could make this machine play like it's 1922 again with no problem at all. I've done it dozens and dozens of times. You see at least they didn't paint over. The original lubrication sticker is still on there. For those of you who don't know what that looks like on your 50, there you go. You know, do a freeze frame on that and you know how to lubricate your 50. And it had the felt washers were still there. For some reason, I find them gone a lot on machines that have been played with like this. I don't know what they thought they were doing that, but that's not a good thing to do. You know, it puts the motor in the wrong position. Your crank never fits right. And I usually have to go crazy trying to find the right felt washers, that's these, of the right thickness to put back in there to put it back where it should be. But there you go. That's just a look at the Victrola 50 that's been taken apart. I haven't done anything to it yet other than disassemble it. And they're such simple machines to disassemble. You can see it's just the 4 bolts. Well, the 3 bolts here, those connect the horn. You can take the horn out. It's still attached to the motorboard. That's easy. The ones in the corners there, those are the ones that hold the motorboard down to the machine. You take those off and you just lift this whole thing right out with the motor and all. And the motor bolts are right here. Those are where the motor itself attaches. And that's pretty much it. A very simple, straightforward machine. Very well made. Very hard to break one. And this one, despite its looks, was still working. You know, it was spinning. I'm sure if I put a needle in that cracked old reproducer over there, well, gasket cracked reproducer, it probably would have played the record, just not very well. And then there you go. Victrola 50 in pieces.